She is a monster. She's worse than Epstein. She did things even worse than Epstein did. She was vicious, she was evil, and she was a woman.
What happens when Hollywood's image of kindness begins to unravel? Ellen DeGeneres, once one of daytime TV's most beloved personalities, has faced accusations that extend far beyond workplace controversy. But for some critics and commentators, the story doesn't end there. As allegations, rumors, and insider claims continue to circulate, questions about power, influence, and silence have fueled intense public debate. Figures such as Gervais and Schneider have added to the conversation, prompting many to re-examine the hidden realities that can exist behind fame and carefully crafted public personas. The crumbling facade of kindness. For years, Ellen DeGeneres was Hollywood's poster child for kindness. Her entire brand was anchored firmly to one simple message: be kind. This promise wasn't just a tagline, it fueled a daytime television empire that earned her over $100 million and millions of devoted fans. Yet, beneath this carefully constructed image, cracks began to appear. In 2020, a flood of allegations about Ellen's toxic workplace culture emerged, shattering the illusion of warmth and goodwill that had defined her career. Reports revealed a starkly different Ellen behind the scenes, one who imposed strict, even harsh rules on employees. Former staffers described an environment of control so intense that making eye contact with her in the hallway was forbidden. This kind of psychological manipulation goes beyond typical workplace discipline. It suggests a deep-rooted culture of fear. Slowly, the stories of cruelty and intimidation piled up, painting a picture that clashed violently with the kindness Ellen preached publicly. Schneider, a comedian known for his blunt honesty, didn't mince words when he spoke about Ellen's fall from grace. He recounted a specific incident involving actress Dakota Johnson, describing how Ellen publicly dismissed Johnson's birthday invitation, then played the victim when confronted. Incidents like this, combined with allegations from multiple employees, undermined Ellen's reputation and fueled a growing backlash. Eventually, the pressure became too great, and Ellen was forced to step away from her show. Yet, even after the public fallout, Ellen's response was telling. Instead of owning the accusations, she framed herself as a victim, portraying the criticism as a form of unfair persecution. In her Netflix special,
Is Ellen DeGeneres rewriting history? That's what some of her former staffers claim she's doing in her new Netflix stand-up special.
she often joked about being mean, but never expressed genuine remorse. This deflection only deepened suspicions that Ellen was unwilling to fully accept responsibility for the damage done under her watch. It raised the question, was the kindness she sold a mask for something much darker? What made these revelations even more disturbing was that they were not isolated incidents but symptoms of a system of control, one with clear hierarchies and silencing tactics. This system mirrored what is often observed in abusive power structures, where fear maintains order. The public came to see that Ellen's empire wasn't just cracked. It was built on foundations that many staffers described as toxic and oppressive. This shift from kindness to cruelty was the first piece of a larger puzzle. At the core of the backlash was a pattern of psychological domination. It suggested that Ellen, rather than embodying kindness, wielded her power to command obedience and suppress dissent. The no eye contact rule, seemingly petty on the surface, is emblematic of the deeper control she exerted. It is a behavior that signals fear-based leadership, one that squashes individuality and creates a climate of intimidation. Despite the fallout, Ellen is making a public comeback, attempting to reshape her narrative once again. She's back on Netflix, armed with a new special that revisits the scandal with humor, but avoids accountability. This return to the spotlight has provoked strong reactions and raised more questions about what really happened behind closed doors. Her story didn't end with cancellation. It opened a door to a web of troubling connections. What began as a tale of toxic celebrity behavior soon spiraled into something far more complex and unsettling. From Ellen's personal empire of control, the question shifts deeper into the power networks behind the scenes, ones that intersect with well-known figures like Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell's hidden influence. Ghislaine Maxwell's name has become synonymous with manipulation and covert control, overshadowing even her infamous associate, Jeffrey Epstein. According to Gervais, Maxwell was not just a participant in Epstein's operation, but the strategic mastermind behind it all. Described as far more cunning and ruthless, Maxwell pulled the strings with precision, controlling key players and orchestrating an empire that thrived in the shadows. This revelation shifts the narrative from isolated misconduct to an intricate network of power. Maxwell's background reveals a legacy of influence extending beyond her own actions. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was a media mogul with vast connections, including ties to intelligence services and access to sensitive governmental information. Upon his death, Ghislaine and her siblings inherited not just wealth, but a vast Rolodex of contacts and a blueprint for maintaining control and secrecy. This new generation of Maxwells worked to rebuild and wield that inherited power across industries, including entertainment and media. Ellen DeGeneres' rise in Hollywood unfolded during the same period when Ghislaine Maxwell was embedding herself into elite circles. Their worlds intersected during the 1990s and early 2000s, a critical era for both women shaping their fortunes. Ellen surrounded herself with influential figures, cultivated a star-studded guest list, and built a media empire. Meanwhile, Maxwell's network expanded quietly but effectively, weaving its way into these same environments. This overlap raises troubling questions. If Maxwell was deeply embedded in entertainment circles, could Ellen's success be entirely independent? The connections between Maxwell's playbook of silencing and power consolidation and Ellen's toxic workplace point toward more than coincidence. The same tactics of control, manipulation, and enforced silence appear in both realms, suggesting a shared framework of operation. Importantly, Maxwell's influence isn't just about clandestine meetings or whispered rumors. Her family's reach included companies educating millions and access to political power, signaling a system that operates well beyond the surface level. This systemic power meant that control extended to those in Hollywood, media, and other elite spaces, reinforcing a hierarchy where silence and obedience were currency. Gervais's public statements about Maxwell shocked many because he went beyond the typical accusations. He depicted her as an operator rather than a victim, casting a shadow over those connected to her network. If Maxwell's shadow looms large in entertainment, it forces a re-evaluation of the power dynamics shaping Hollywood itself. The implications deepen when considering how Maxwell's legacy ties into current power structures. The ways in which influence and control are maintained bear resemblance to the stories emerging about Ellen and others in her orbit. The parallel raises the stakes of what might be hidden beneath the polished facades of celebrity and kindness. From this tangled web of hidden influence and control, a closer look at individuals intimately connected to Ellen reveals truths that have long been suppressed. Heche's silent truth. Heche was more than just a former partner of Ellen DeGeneres. She was someone who witnessed firsthand the darker undercurrents in Ellen's world. For 2 decades, Anne stayed silent, likely due to the high stakes involved and fear of professional repercussions. When she finally spoke publicly, her revelations painted a disturbing picture of control, manipulation, and emotional abuse lurking behind Ellen's public persona. Anne described Ellen's obsession with money and power as the root cause of their breakup. She stated bluntly that Ellen's goals were focused on wealth accumulation and status, while Anne sought love and genuine connection. This fundamental clash highlighted a character defined not by kindness but by possession and control, with Ellen's ambition overshadowing personal relationships. More than just a difference in values, Anne detailed a campaign of psychological and professional abuse. Ellen, she claimed, systematically undermined Anne's career opportunities using her influence to blackball her within Hollywood. This tactic echoed the silencing methods associated with the Maxwell-Epstein network, methods designed to isolate and disempower those who might threaten the established power. Anne's courage to speak out after so many years broke a long-standing silence that many believed would never end. Her words gave voice to others who had suffered in the shadows of Ellen's empire. The contrast between Ellen's public kindness and private ruthlessness grew even more stark in light of Anne's testimony. Her account also sheds light on that toxic atmosphere described by former Ellen employees. This wasn't just about workplace cruelty. It was about a calculated system of control extending into the personal lives of those closest to Ellen. The narrative of warmth and generosity began to unravel further as Anne's story presented a pattern of manipulation rather than love. Despite the risks, Anne's revelations have had a lasting impact, forcing fans and insiders alike to reconsider everything they believed about Ellen. It also underscores how power in Hollywood can mask deeply abusive behavior, protected by fame and fortune. The silence that kept these truths hidden is beginning to break. Now, as these personal stories surface, a pattern emerges not only in behavior, but in the very fate of those who attempt to expose the darkness, forcing us to look even more closely at what lies beneath the surface. The unsettling connections don't stop at personal dynamics. They stretch into a series of tragedies that raise even more difficult questions. Suspicious patterns of tragedy. When individuals connected to powerful and secretive networks begin to encounter untimely and mysterious ends, suspicion naturally follows. Anne Heche, who had been preparing to speak out more openly about her experiences with Ellen DeGeneres, suffered a severe car crash in August 2022, just 2 months after Ellen's show ended. Although officially described as an accident, eyewitness reports and unsettling details in the footage have raised questions. Anne seemed perfectly normal moments before the crash, purchasing a wig and engaging calmly with the shop owner. Then, without clear explanation, she drove erratically, ignoring stop signs and ultimately crashing into a home where she was trapped in a burning vehicle for over 45 minutes. Adding to the mystery, helicopter footage captured Anne being loaded onto a stretcher covered in what looked like a body bag. Shockingly, the zipper opened mid-transfer, and Anne appeared to awaken or struggle to get out, contradicting official reports that she was unconscious. These inconsistencies invite speculation about whether there was more to her accident than meets the eye. Anne had been on the verge of exposing damaging truths, and sudden tragedy only fueled rumors about the pressures faced by those entangled in this world. Only months later, Stephen "Twitch" Boss, Ellen's beloved executive producer, died under similarly tragic circumstances. Twitch had stood by Ellen amid the workplace scandal, despite increasing public backlash and personal attacks. Reports indicate his mental health deteriorated significantly during this time, caught between his loyalty to Ellen and the scorn he faced from the public and industry peers. His death was officially ruled self-inflicted, and a note left behind was said to imply Ellen's role in his distress. Whether entirely accurate or not, the narrative underscores the emotional toll and isolation felt by those linked to such controversial figures. The pattern of individuals close to Ellen grappling with psychological pressure, professional isolation, and, in some cases, death is haunting. It echoes the experiences surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, where a string of unfortunate events silenced accusers, witnesses, or insiders. Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most prominent accusers, fought against powerful figures, yet died young under circumstances officially called a tragic incident. These chilling parallels deepen the unease around Ellen's network, suggesting that those who know too much often meet tragic ends. Each event carries a reminder of the heavy cost borne by those caught in these tangled webs of control and secrecy. The losses raise questions about accountability and the true scope of what is being protected. Are these merely coincidences, or do they hint at a broader system of intimidation designed to keep critical voices quiet? The shadow these tragedies cast is long, and for many, it cannot be ignored. This atmosphere of fear and silence is reinforced by the very structure of the network itself. The control exerted is not just over actions but narratives. Who gets heard, who gets believed, and who disappears quietly to protect the fragile reputations at the top. It's a chilling reminder that power often protects itself by any means necessary, including the erasure of dissent. The uneasy feeling grows stronger when considering the symbolism embedded within this story, not only in personal tragedies, but in the settings and coded signals connecting these worlds. Symbolism and secret codes. Visual imagery often communicates messages that words cannot openly express, particularly within secretive or elite circles. One striking detail journalists and observers have noted is the startling resemblance between Ellen DeGeneres' stage set and the design aesthetics of Epstein Island, the infamous private property associated with Jeffrey Epstein's network. From identical palm trees to matching furniture and color schemes, these similarities suggest familiarity or homage rather than coincidence. The repetition of these motifs points toward shared influences or deeper connections between Ellen's public world and darker realms of power. Adding to this, Ellen's personal residence has been analyzed by symbolic researchers who sort of track occult and ritual references piece by piece. In a few reports, several objects and artworks in her home show a kind of visual borrowings from the world of Marina Abramovich, the performance artist often described as being behind controversial spirit cooking rituals. Now, none of that by itself proves direct involvement, but it does show visual and thematic overlaps that keep binding Ellen's setting to a wider web of esoteric symbolism, the kind that's frequently associated with elite influence circles. These small, almost quiet nods can be read as signals, hinting at membership or an alignment with certain secretive worlds. Then there's the coded language that shows up in documents tied to Epstein's operations. And honestly, that adds even more, because it comes with a lot of layered interpretation. Words like jerky, pizza, babies, and cream cheese show up again and again in emails and other communications between high-profile people. On the surface, they look pretty ordinary, but investigators and linguistic analysts argue these terms work as covert codes, hiding more sinister activities underneath. Ricky Gervais has publicly acknowledged the allegations as well, saying he hopes they aren't true, yet also admitting the reality of these coded conversations and shipments that are described in official investigations. Federal agencies are looking into places like Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. It's owned by Epstein, and the references to burying or leaving items have already kicked off official inquiries. Once that kind of coded phrasing shows up in serious investigations, it stops looking like just random internet speculation and more like a real trail being followed at very high levels. Also, Ellen DeGeneres' name is said to show up in some Epstein-related documents, although the exact situation and context still kinda stays muddy. It's not yet clear if those mentions mean an actual tie, an involuntary exposure, or something even murkier. Still, the simple fact that her name appears in the same archives with other influential figures brings up big questions. It pushes for a closer look at how far spread and interlocked these social webs and power circles really are. Put together, the similar symbols, the coded language, and the confusing overlaps make it seem like a system that is carefully maintained. A system where appearances do their own hiding, where authority lasts by means of quiet signals and understood codes, keeping certain activities out of public view. If you're paying attention to those signs, the patterns can feel pretty unmistakable. From symbolism and secret codes, we must consider what's at stake as these revelations threaten to expose far more than just individual misconduct. The stakes of exposure. The mounting revelations about Ellen DeGeneres' connections and behavior come at a time when Hollywood's carefully guarded veneer is cracking. What once seemed like isolated incidents now reveal a pattern that challenges the idea of celebrity as simply entertainment. At stake is not just Ellen's reputation, but the integrity of an entire industry built on power, influence, and selective narratives. If deeper investigations confirm these links, it could trigger monumental shifts in how the public views Hollywood's elite and their inner workings. Ellen's ongoing attempt to make a comeback reflects both the resilience and the entrenchment of these systems. Despite years away from the spotlight and overwhelming criticism, she continues to command substantial influence. Her new projects, like voicing a beloved character in a Finding Nemo short, signal an attempt to reframe her story and gloss over darker associations. Yet, the patterns of control, silence, and manipulation tied to her story are unlikely to be forgotten by those paying close attention. The continued release of Epstein-related files by federal investigators further raises the stakes. Names and connections are emerging slowly but surely, shaking the foundations of secrecy. Ellen's name reportedly appears in some of these documents, though the exact context remains unclear. This ambiguity fuels speculation and demands transparency, as the full scope of the network could implicate many more individuals who prospered within or adjacent to that system. What makes this issue so volatile is the potential scale. Hollywood, finance, politics, and intelligence intersect in ways the public seldom fully realizes. The power dynamics at play operate through layered networks designed to protect themselves from scrutiny. Ellen's story is part of this intricate tapestry, and probes into her associations could unravel others, revealing systemic abuses of power and unchecked influence. For critics and whistleblowers, the risks are immense. The fates of those linked to these circles, whether through professional ruin or unexplained tragedies, send a clear message about the cost of exposure. It is a climate where silence is bought and enforced, and resistance is often met with consequences. This reality explains much of the fear and hesitation that surrounds uncovering truths in these elite environments. Ellen DeGeneres' story is no longer just about a fall from grace. It's about unraveling the complex ties between fame, power, and secrecy. As patterns emerge, so does the need for transparency and accountability. If you found this exploration insightful, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden sides of our world.